back, everyone. This is Unit 2 of Lesson 6. There's always more than enough. In the last lesson, we talked about gratitude. Well, practicing gratitude also helps us live with an abundance mindset. And abundance literally means a very large quantity of something. So when we believe that there is so much of something to go around, we're not consistently in a competing mindset. So let's take this course, for example. There's so many courses, webinars, and classes on personal growth, some with similar messages and others with a completely different spin. But there's a lot for people to choose from. If I lived with a scarcity mindset, I could have convinced myself that there was no point in creating this masterclass because the market was already saturated. But I choose to live with an abundance mindset and believe that there's enough learners in the world to go around and enough room in the market for my masterclass too, because it's distinct to me and to my teaching and to an audience that is conducive to my type of philosophy. Stephen Covey, in his classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, explains the concept of abundance and scarcity beautifully. He says most people are deeply scripted in scarcity mentality, and they see life as only having just enough, as though there was only one pie out there. And if someone were to get a big piece of that pie, it would mean less for everybody else. So that scarcity mentality is really the zero-sum paradigm of life. So people with that scarcity mentality then really have a difficult time sharing recognition and credit. So even with those who help, help them along their way of success or power or profit. And they also have a really hard time being genuinely happy for the success of other people. An abundance mentality, on the other hand, really flows from a deep inner sense of personal worth and security. It's really the paradigm that there is plenty out there and enough for everybody. And it results in the sharing of prestige and recognition and profits and decision-making. It really opens possibilities and options and alternatives and creativity. So Covey tells us that when you live in a world of scarcity, you compete for available resources, even when there's an abundance of them. So living with that prosperity mindset then really means you're not consumed by what you do not have. You value your unique qualities, recognizing that you have things to give. And you really capitalize on your strengths and recognize that you have what it takes to be all that you want to be, whatever that looks like for you. So for some, that could be success in leading your family or success in living a healthy lifestyle and living in abundance. For others, it could be career related or becoming an entrepreneur. So, whatever that means for you is what opens up to you. So success, much like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. And living with an abundance mindset really means that you truly believe there is enough to go around. So there's enough money, there's enough praise at work, there's enough love, enough friends. An abundance mindset really leads us to want others to succeed in life just as much as we want ourselves to succeed. And this is the mindset that helps us recognize that there's enough awesomeness to go around. We don't have to be successful at the expense of others. Nor does the fact that others may have what you want mean that there's none or even less for you. So an abundance mindset then really helps us to strive to be better every single day, because each new day is an opportunity to learn, to love, to live, and to grow. I've never met a successful person who lives their life with an attitude of scarcity. As a society, we need to do a better job of encouraging others to do well. Let's celebrate and embrace the awesomeness whenever we find it, so that we'll find more of it within ourselves. I wasn't always like this. So like many type A personalities, I felt that people needed to fail in order for me to succeed. Well, maybe that's a little harsh. I don't think I wanted people to fail necessarily. That felt a little wrong, but I didn't know how else to do better. So, as a woman in business, or any person in business for that matter, it seems that you must continually prove yourself. So, your worth and your value. You're only as good as your last win. And, what have you done for me lately? Were consistent messages when I worked in the corporate environment. So, how could you possibly consistently prove yourself if you weren't better than everybody else? And that was the question. So this is a mindset that can easily be changed, and it all starts with self-leadership. So I've always considered myself a bit of a lucky person. So not lottery lucky. I've never, not that, lottery lucky, winning money type of lucky, but life lucky. Money doesn't last forever, and nor does it bring true happiness. So I would rather have things go well in me for life and enjoy it rather than have millions of dollars and be miserable. And I didn't realize until I read John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that the luck I experienced was really more about the law of intuition rather than pure magical leprechaun luck. So this law of intuition, suggests that who you are dictates what you see. And it's founded on the premise that everybody is intuitive in his or her area of strength. So although I wouldn't have always said this, I can confidently now say that one of my areas of strength is leadership. I still have a lot of growing and learning to do in that regard, and I continue to study and read and learn and grow and apply new things every single day. But it is a strength for me. I've done a lot of work on my emotional intelligence, which we spent some time talking about previously. I've done a lot of work on my spiritual growth and a lot of work on myself. So this work has really, truly allowed me to see things through a completely different lens. In studying that law of intuition, I learned that almost every time a person is in the right place at the right time, other people are also in that same place at the same time too. A leader, though, is just more aware. So after learning this, I had somewhat of an epiphany moment and realized, I have done things at the right time or been in the right place at the right time. But much of the success that came out of those times was really as a result of my ability to read trends, anticipate needs, and use my intuition to guide me to where I needed to be. So they say that success happens when preparedness meets opportunity. And when we are constantly preparing for what it is our heart desires, then we're ready for the opportunities that present themselves. Now, I say this with the caveat that things will not always go our way. So in fact, I've experienced my fair share of, downs, detours, and bumps in the road. And although I've struggled with some of these things through difficult times, I've really embraced each and every one of them with an eye towards learning the lessons they were meant to bring. So things will not always be perfect in life. And yes, sometimes life will suck. But if you're able to reflect on the awesomeness that really lives within you and around you, you'll still feel confident during those tumultuous times and really have a sense of contentment. So to be awesome, then, we must be leaders. And I'm not talking about leaders in the traditional sense, although you may be that too, but leaders of our own life, leaders of ourselves. We must be able to lead ourselves. As a natural byproduct of this, others may want to follow you, and what you choose to do with your leadership abilities outside of making yourself and your life awesome is really a personal decision that only you can make. But one thing's for certain, the more that we celebrate that awesomeness in others, the more that we find it within ourselves. And we can only do that with an abundance mindset and mentality. My friend and colleague, Katie Schultz, is truly amazing at this. So they say that less than 3% of the world's leaders are natural born leaders. Katie's one of those 3%. She has such charisma. And she's one of the women, when she walks in a room, she just lights up the whole room the minute she steps foot through the door. And she constantly celebrates other people, women especially. And she brings the best out in people by acknowledging every single accomplishment and achievement, no matter how trivial or insignificant they themselves may believe it to be. So being on the receiving end of Katie's encouragement, I've witnessed this firsthand. And after spending several years working as a lawyer in the insurance industry, Katie ventured out into her own, into the unknown, I guess, and launched her own firm in 2015 with a partner. She is an accomplished litigator. She's won several awards and, is just a huge advocate for people in general. And it's not the awards that makes Katie or defines Katie. Of course, they're all extremely prestigious and well-deserved and really speak volumes to her expertise and passion and drive. But what I love about Katie is that it goes so much deeper than that. She's one of the few people I know who is genuinely passionate about inspiring and celebrating others. She does a lot of volunteering within the industry and also sits on the board of directors of Holland Bloor View Kids Rehab Hospital Foundation, working to raise funds for their bigger endowment to end Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And she was inspired to contribute by her son Emery as he battles this horrific disease. So as a mother of two, wife, entrepreneur, litigator, educator, speaker, volunteer, and lifter of women everywhere, I knew Katie would be a perfect contributor to my book when I wrote it. So I had asked her if she would be willing to contribute. And in true Katie fashion, she was happy to help. So when I asked Katie then, how does she manage to be her best self every day? She shared that knowing her core values is what's important to her. And it's really what's driven how she's developed her career and her family and her not-for-profit life. And she goes on to say that she is of a generation that was raised to be pleasers, and this can create barriers to alignment. So instead of focusing on, how you tick and what makes you tick, these things are put on the back burner because you're wired to want to please others. And if you're working on pleasing someone else, then you need to refocus, is kind of her message. And really knowing your values helps you do this. So your values shouldn't alter too much over the years. How you express them may change, but fundamentally they really kind of remain the same. So even on a really hard day, these core values guide Katie. And she also shared that it's important not to identify yourself in the moment as being either positive or negative, a success or a failure. So remove that identity piece from your vocabulary. Her values aren't about defining herself based on one beat. So it's about consistency and longevity. We live in such an instantaneous world. We're constantly exposed to immediate gratification or criticism. And we need to be sure to look at our cumulative efforts and sustained behaviors, which she jokes can be difficult sometimes based on her own behaviors. Nonetheless, though, it is important to view things through this lens of consistency. So Katie also acknowledges that life can be difficult at times. And, she's a business owner, a mother of a son with health challenges, and there's lots of pressures. So we all have bad days. When Katie has a bad day, she doesn't let that control the beat of her life. So lastly, Katie shares that being her best self involves being comfortable with discomfort. So doing this is really a skill set, and it's not about experiencing the feeling of discomfort at all. It's really about identifying with it. So understanding the nature of the discomfort and working through it. And we talked a little bit about this when we talked about emotions and observing them and working with them, right? Same thing, working with the discomfort. So often for Katie, when discomfort will arise, she, thinks about it in the context of a learning opportunity. And she reminds herself that it's okay to be uncomfortable because our uncomfort or discomfort zone is a growth zone. And she focuses on that aspect of the growth spectrum. And this really helps her move through that discomfort piece. So many of us have experienced the belief that we have to be over prepared and perfect, but this isn't true. So when faced with those types of feelings, Katie reminds herself that she does not have to be perfect and embraces the discomfort, knowing that she will grow because of it. Katie's story goes to support so many of the principles in this masterclass and really emulates what many others have shared as well with me. She's truly an extraordinary woman, and I'm grateful to her for sharing her insight with me so I could in turn share it with you, in the hopes that it will inspire you to find the awesomeness within yourself and within others. In 2013, I assumed the role of president for the Ontario Insurance Adjusters Association. And it's tradition for the first edition of the WP magazine, it stands for Without Prejudice, to do an expose on the incoming president. So a writer is hired and they interview the incoming president as well as their friends and family members with the view of giving the members of the association a glimpse into their new president. And as I was preparing for the interview, my mom introduced me to this poem because, in her words, it reminded her of me. And as I read it, it reminded me of so many great people that I've been fortunate enough to know in my life. And I really think it touches on everything that we've just spent talking about, that we've been talking about in this last unit around gratitude and living with an abundance mindset and making a difference. So I thought it would be fitting to share with all of you. And it's called Wide Open, and it's from I Will Not Die, An Unlived Life, Finding Purpose and Passion by Donna Markova. And it goes like this. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of failing or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. What a beautiful poem. And it always gives me such chills and energy every time I read it or hear it. How beautiful of a world would it be if we just all celebrated and elevated ourselves and others? And we can only do this when we're living with an abundance mindset and in a state of gratitude. Well, that's it for lesson 2 of unit 6. So let's move on to lesson 3 to talk a little bit about making a difference. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.